Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Esoteric Survivalist. Today we're going to talk about the alchemy of internalization. We have spoken at length of the five yamas, which are externalized transformations. They are disciplines of the mind. They are corrections of character. And in these corrections, we learn to be one, less biased, if not unbiased. Two, more genuine because we see things more clearly and we engage into habits of response from this clear vision. And our habits of response do not fall into dogmatism, they don't fall into prescribed behaviors, they don't fall into habituated knee jerk reactions. So we can process information much more truly objectively within our subjectivity, within our own being. This leads to an understanding of what it means to be genuine. So even when we're hypocrites to ourselves, this can turn around. And so we realize no matter what other people say or how their responses are, that we are being genuine. And we can also understand that that does not mean we have free reign to hurt other people under claiming that we are genuine, because that's not what genuine means. Genuine means that you are in full awareness of yourself without judgment, without condemnation. So acceptance doesn't mean capitulation. It doesn't mean that you bow down to what's going on. It means that any change you make with a clear view. So this is meant to clarify the mind. It doesn't go deep into silencing the mind or anything like that, but it clarifies things because it gives you a reference frame of a certain upright stance of being. And this leads to an understanding of boundaries, and it leads to an intuitive sense of when our boundaries are violated, when we may violate others' boundaries. And that leads to a sense of, okay, this is my integrity. So this integrity is quite flexible. If it's too strict, that means it's built on preconceptions, it's built on conjecture. It's built on a priori givens and dogmas that may not be real at all. They may be based on past traumas or some other thing or conditioning, but we want to transcend that. And when we do that, we're capable of this level, which is called brahmacharya, which is often mistaken for celibacy, and that is not what it is, in my honest opinion. Brahmacharya is proper behavior that's built on spontaneity, that's built on integrity, that's built on being genuine. And proper behavior includes being a creative individual in a natural way. It doesn't mean forcing creativity or having to be super skilled. It just means you are creatively minded. It means to have the imagination of a child, but at the same time, with an appreciation of maturity and what maturity means. It means taking responsibility for things. That's why it stems from nonviolence, because if you don't react violently, you're actually beginning to take responsibility. You realize then your genuine nature, you realize the value of boundaries, you realize what natural proper behavior is, because brahmacharya is the vehicle of brahma, the conduct of a social norm, you might say, that is not artificial. So this also leads to an appreciation of learning, because Brahma was the god of whose consort Saraswati ruled the arts and the sciences and any creative behavior, music, writing, painting, sculpting, etc., etc. So this leads to a form of mental fulfillment, or a sense of entering mental fulfillment. When this happens, we can actually learn to navigate life so we don't have to grasp, so we don't have to force an anchor into our situations so we don't get carried away, or life doesn't blow us away. We learn to trust ourselves, we learn to trust life. I'm not talking about trusting humanity or society or convention. I'm talking about trusting the very dynamics of life, when we seek to engage with it deliberately, genuinely, and with integrity. So essentially, what we're doing is cultivating principles. These are ethical principles that are natural. They're not artificial. They're not dependent on social conditioning. Even brahmacharya isn't really dependent on social conditioning. It is something we have within us to get along with our environment, to be in equilibrium in all our relationships, even if there is turmoil. And because there is, and because we haven't done away with all the irregularities, shall we say, all the corruptions, all the distortions of our awareness, that's what deeper processes of harnessing or yoga do. It's not so much about silencing the mind, it's about removing the distortions from it, removing the perturbations that aren't natural to the mind's workings. And these are created by trauma, by knee-jerk reactions, by um, conditioning, brainwashing, anything, opinions that we see that we are subliminally threatened that we have to follow these opinions. So we develop a sense of courage here. But once we get to the point where we don't grasp, we start noticing that the negativity in our lives and the positive stuff, all of this is a function of what we might call our karma or extended dynamic of cause and effect, where something in the past, in this life, or maybe we want to consider past lives, but we don't have to. We can say, okay, that's in our genetic makeup. Or that there's a deep subconscious dynamic that may be correlated to something akin to a past life. Um, Past lives are a convenient way of looking at things because you can take all of these intuitive sensings and put a structure to them and a structure of events that constitute something that may have happened in a life. So this is a dramatization of these cause and effect patterns. And you begin to understand these. And when you begin to understand these, you begin to understand where you're capitulating, where others may be violating you, or where society may be violating you, where even the environment may be violating you, or where you may be allowing this violation. This also means that you may be causing violation, not just to others in your own environment, but to yourself by opening up to influences that you may not see at the level of the subconscious, for example, that come and create negative effects that cause suffering. So you begin to notice your first level of internalization, and that first level is saucha in Sanskrit, and that means hygiene, cleanliness. It is usually meant to convey physical cleanliness, like ritual bath taking, but it really refers to psychic cleanliness, which is a result of physical cleanliness sometimes, a sound mind and a sound body, as they say. So, this cleanliness can go very deep. It's not just a superficial thing. It can go into where we might call psychic self defense, where negative thought forms can be neutralized or deflected or even transformed and transmuted, which is the highest level of psychic self defense. So, because when you transmute something like that, you take its energy, you actually can absorb it, all the dynamic momentum of it, without succumbing to its pattern or its directive, because you eliminate that. You flatline it, but the momentum is still there, and then you can use that energy for other things, like your own vitality. So, once you can handle the situation where you're perceiving the negative effects, you can learn to cleanse yourself. Now, at the simplest level, yes, a ritual bath is, or shower, or whatever, and physical cleanliness and good hygiene are important to maintain psychic hygiene. It's like the adage saying, clean your room, organize, in order to, clear your mind, to be able to put things in order so you won't be confused, to structure your life. However, psychic hygiene goes beyond just cleanliness in the sense of ordering things. It means removing the negativity, literally. And this negativity isn't like a part of yourself. You're not repressing anything, you're not rejecting or denying anything. This is removing distortion. And the basis of distortion is really hatred, which doesn't mean somebody has to hate you. It's a presence or an energy or a pattern that is destructive, is corrupting. You might call it the entropy, but that's not what entropy is. Uh, it's like a force that causes everything to boil down to the common denominator of dust, of nothingness. Where if something is there, it's just flatline, and not in the way where you remove distortion. The very pattern of life itself is compromised. So as soon as you start this cleanliness, you'll start noticing that you feel better. And you start noticing, especially if you want to include a sense of healthy living, because healthy living is cleanliness. When you eat right, you are essentially cleaning your body out. Fasting for some people, if you're predisposed to it. Some people are not predisposed to it. I know I'm not. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. But when you can clear things out this way, when you can prevent the negativity from coming in, just by intending that you want this cleanliness, this hygiene on all levels. Because right now we're not learning techniques here. All we have is our intention. You can call it our ability to manifest. So you can manifest this cleanliness by intending it. You can use verbal affirmations for it, but it's really your desire for it, getting in touch with your desire to be clean, not pure and saintly, but clean. And as you do that, you realize that you have a natural sense of well being. It's not ecstasy, it's not some mystical life changing experience, but it's a form of contentment. Contentment doesn't mean you can take everything and be happy with nothing. It means that, okay, I'm not flipping out. I'm in equilibrium. I'm pretty much content in the moment. Even though I have desires, even though I have needs, even though there's lack, even though I want to strive towards something, the moment itself is not at fault. So, mulling over negativity really doesn't work because it can choke you. And so, once cleanliness hits, you learn that, okay, I can release this. And as I release this, I can find this contentment in the moment because when I have this, then I make space. And when I make this space, I'm able to enter the last three internalizations. This is where the true alchemy begins. And this is where the real focus of this discussion is. The important thing is that these three internalizations mirror the deeper processes of the 8 limbs of the Yoga Sutras. Essentially, the last three, which is concentration, meditation or contemplation, and samadhi. I'm using the Sanskrit word because it doesn't have an English equivalent, but it's basically a summation of harmonizing your awareness into its true essence. So before we get into the next 5, shall we say, yoga harnessing limbs or subdivisions of the whole harnessing process, we can see that they condense into these 3 internalizations. This is why the Yoga Sutras call them Kriya Yoga, which means the harnessing of action. So now we're starting to do something. Now we're starting to act differently. Before we were basically creating mental stances. We were creating a certain mental orientation. We were establishing reference points and principles of behavior and conduct in order to navigate the internal realm. And in doing so, we internalized and noticed our need for greater hygiene. And we internalized and noticed our emerging well being when this happens. The more ethical you are in the real and natural sense, the less conflict you have inside. Your conscience is kind of clear. When that happens, you clear means clean, and this cleanliness leads to well-being. So even if we don't do anything, the harnessing process itself is building momentum and leading us if we are observant. It leads us into the deeper internalization processes. And we begin with the first of the three because they are three bundled into one. They are action harnessing. So through your activity, you're actively engaging in a form of harnessing that's true yoking with your inner potential. And we begin with tapas, which is tapa, it means fire. This is the inner fire. The inner fire of the mind, as we approach these internalized dynamics, eventually leads to the deeper spiritual mystic fire, because fire is animated consciousness. We usually think of consciousness as a mental receptivity, because you stop your thoughts and you look at the essence of consciousness, you sense it, you feel it, you experience it, and as you are experiencing it, it reveals itself as something not passive, but something that is. So people don't really associate their consciousness with action. They associate their mind and their mental will. And they're two different things. See, you're shifting from a mental forced will and you're moving that dynamic of willingness, of will, into the essence of your consciousness, into your awareness, where you say, okay, I'm putting my attention here. Now you would say, well, that's concentration, that's later on. No, you're putting your attention somewhere with a certain amount of force because we have fire going on here. Your attention is a flame, and it's not a pinpoint attention. It can be diffuse, it can be all over the world. You can look at the horizon from one end to the other and still maintain a fiery attention. But usually it's abstractly internalized. So this attention internalized provides the force that will let the other two internalizations that follow gain their own force and momentum and be effective. Because once you tap into this fiery force, which is essentially your spiritual passion, this passion is your desire for fulfillment, your desire for wholeness. So you mean business. And meaning business does not mean being tense. You relax, you're clean, and now you can mean business. If you try to engage in your mental will prematurely, it can become egoic, it can become selfish, it can be burdened by preconceptions. A lack of a genuine nature and a misconception of your own motives can derail everything. And it can cause undue stress and internal conflict as well as external conflict. So this is mental will, but by this time, since you've internalized and you've entered a state of well-being, it isn't just mental intellectual will. It's a will that's more or less moving to incorporate the intuition and the reasoning processes. It's very important here. We're going to linger on this later because it seems that we need to discuss each of these three separately because they're not just misunderstood, but they're underutilized. You see, the next one, once you tap into your force of will, the true force of will, the fire, you can actually apply it toward looking at yourself, self-observation. Now, this is not passive self-observation. You're not entering yourself and doing things. I mean, we say, well, if it's active self-observation, that means that you're pushing on yourself or something. No. This is an intensity of relaxed receptivity, but it's not passive. It doesn't just take what is because that's not strong enough to penetrate deeply into your own awareness frame, into your field of consciousness, what the yogis call chitta, the essence of awareness or the field of awareness. That's abstract and non-local. It's not just a field around your body like the aura, but it's a non-local essence that encompasses the mind and the awareness of the body and what we might call the energy body. All of it's in there. And this field is the only true portion of what your awareness is. Everything else is a structuring of it. It comes after, so to speak. And so, if you can get into the ability to study yourself, to look at yourself without judgment, without evaluation, without verbalization, well, this is what meditation is. No, this is why I'm saying that it's been misunderstood, because internalization is not necessarily meditation. Self observation is not necessarily meditation. The sutras themselves distinguish between all of these things. The modern term of meditation or contemplation seems to encompass everything. It's like a blanket term. That's why some pundits would say that no, we should use a different word than meditation here. We should use like contemplation, but they're all the same thing. The sutras themselves actually go to the trouble to give you different terms for the same almost process. For the same dynamic of internalization, you have a spectrum. So this spectrum starts with your principles of ethics, shall we say, with a reorientation of the mind, a mental stance, and then it moves into learning how to internalize before you get into the real stuff, or the important stuff, shall we say. That doesn't mean that this internalization alchemy is not important. In fact, it's very, very significant and important and crucial, because missing it will leave a gap and then you're going to have problems. My experience tells me that when you move through these stages, if you move through them sequentially and let the next one blossom from the previous, you're going to have less problems when you go down the line to do the actual psychic amplification that dhyana or meditation proper truly is. Because once you can lead to a point where you have a sense of your own consciousness, what is consciousness? Well, the one so-called meditation of Ramana Maharshi was the Who Am I meditation. It was basically taking the I thought, I am, and experiencing all of the sensations, the very subtle sensations of what it means to experience I am for yourself, and then take out the words. You can do this piecemeal. You can say, okay, I, what is that? Am, the verb, what is that? I am, what is that? Take out the I and leave the verb. You'll notice that consciousness might actually correlate with a verb more. It's a vibe. It's a humming. It's a sensate presence, a state of presence. That's why if you project into the future or linger on the past and obsess about it, you lose your own consciousness. You lose touch with yourself. So what's there? Well, something else, obviously. We can call it a program or a behavioral structure that has nothing to do with what you truly are in terms of your awareness frame. But when that happens, when you can internalize in a genuine manner, then you can actually open up and surrender and conceive of your own true inner authority. That's where you go to the real who am I. And you realize that this inner authority is a luminous revelation of presence. This may not happen immediately, it rarely does, but you don't have to put the pressure on yourself that meditation puts on you. It's a little stressful when you get into meditation like that, or say, this is meditation, that's meditation. Oh, I can't do it. I've been doing it for years and not much has changed, or maybe a little, because you're going too fast. And in the end, you end up spinning your wheels and you rev up and you spin your wheels even faster, go into something more advanced, but you're not getting anywhere. I'm not saying everybody's like this, because we're all different. I mean, some of us have predispositions. Some of us have more predispositions. Some of us are truly spiritually talented, you might say. But the majority of us need to learn to get into the nitty-gritty gradually. And we need to learn to detoxify from our programming by degrees. and to observe every degree, because this isn't quite psychotherapy, not in the conventional sense. This is an internalization because when you reach the level of Ishvara, you are open to something greater than your previous self, but it's still you. It's the very core of your being, actually. Esoteric Christianity, I believe, calls it Christ consciousness. So when this does open up, it can be a spiritual revelation. It can be an anointing of sorts. And the sutras themselves say that, look, there are many ways to tune into Ishvara. Uh, One of the most, for me, the easiest and the most defined is just the mantra Om. If you tone Om, which is, you can see, you can hear others tone it and how it vibrates your inner, the fine bones in your nasal cavity and above, right below the brain, and they create a vibration that vibrates the brain itself and creates a standing wave, and this will alter the way your nerves function because your brain is a piezoelectric amorphous crystal in a sense. And so you engage in a form of neuroplasty where your own neurons learn a new thing and so create new connections and new brain structures, neurological structures in the cortex, as well as the deeper centers, and lead you to an opening that is, however, based on the previous. You cannot be an unethical person. And I don't mean artificially unethical, hypocritical, or just following somebody's rules. I mean principles that actually mean something to you and that you have embodied. And when you have these principles and you can be clean and healthy, psychically speaking, then Ishvara is much closer than you ever thought. I'm going to allow the listeners who have engaged with me to this point to ponder this because there are deeper levels of engagement with Ishvara. And technically, the esoteric survivalist is not concerned with psychic attainment at a very high level. It's concerned with getting down to the nitty gritty so you can stand up in the world realistically and see for yourself what all of this really is with this mystical stuff. And you don't have to stop doing what other things interest you as well in the esoteric field. You can do it in parallel. But if somebody is completely lost, in my honest opinion, this is where to start. So in the next installment, we're going to get deeper into the yoga kriya, internalizations, because these are the true foundation of alchemy, internal alchemy. So for now, thank you for listening. And I urge you to go to my Substack page, linked below, because there are many esoteric articles there, probably different than anything else you've ever read. They're similar, but it's my own take. And my own take is based on 40 years of experience, punctuated by several mystical happenings in my own psyche and even with my environment and nature, everything. I'm not going to get into those, but the mystical happenings have established a whole sequence of revelations and understandings, and this is what I'm sharing with you. This is not secondhand information. It has to be based on secondhand information, however, in order to make sense, because otherwise I would have to create a new vocabulary, and I'm not going to do that. So thank you again. Till next time, Magus out.